Computer. All right, good. Okay, so I use the term blind sides because I use that term because I think that it accurately describes thoughts that we don't want, that we may not even be aware of, that are really getting in the way of us being our best selves, that are fulfilling our lives the way we want. They can be hugely impactful, they can be mildly impactful. I call them blind sides. So that's the term I'm going to use here for the thoughts that get in your own way. So the agenda here is that I'm going to describe what blind sides are, how to identify them if you're not aware of them, and I think none of us are fully aware of them. Where do they reside? How to change them? And then if there's time, I'll get into a simple meditation method, and if there's enough time, I'll play a short piece of music so we can use some of these methods together, although I doubt we'll have time for it. Then I'll do a quick review, and along the way and at the end, I'm happy to take questions. If you have them, post them in chat. Um, so I gave you the disclaimer, we discussed the recordings, use the chat box. I recommend you use the speaker view button, so it's up to you. And the chat box is where you can post questions, of course. So what are examples of blind sides? I'll give you an example from my life. I've been really fortunate in making successes in business and making money from that. And I've been pretty stupid when it comes to investing that money. And I figured out that I had a belief that I didn't deserve to be wealthy, right? So if you have that belief, then if you can work as hard as you like on investing money, but it's going to not work very well because deep down inside you, there's this perception that you don't deserve to be wealthy anyway. That's going to be this saboteur working against you at all times, right? So that's a good example. Another example is somebody who thinks they're a failure, and whatever they do, that's always going to undermine their successes, right? Somebody that believes they don't deserve to be loved, they're going to have a difficult time getting true love in their lives, aren't they? Somebody who doesn't believe they deserve to be respected is going to go around trying to get respect and never succeeding. That's the way it works, right? So those are examples of blind sides. The problem is when we don't know about them. Because if we have a thought process that is undermining us, at least we're aware of it, at least we can pay attention and do things and attempt to fix it, overcome it. Not to say that that's easy, but that's a hell of a lot better than not even being aware, right? And obviously, as I said earlier, I've experienced that with people who work for me when I've been helping them grow and overcome their own blind sides. So how to find them becomes rather important. Um, there's loads of people who are getting psychotherapy where they're trying to figure out which of their parents screwed them up in what way and trying to remember things they can't remember about a trauma that screwed them up for the rest of their lives. And then, when they figured it out, they'll forgive their parents and process it and so forth. But sometimes the memories aren't there because the memories aren't there in a form that you can recall them. So that becomes a rather tiresome process. And the fact of the matter is that there's science now to prove that human beings have some number of generations of memories stored in our DNA at birth. So we're born with memories, right? We don't know if it's 10 generations or 100, but it explains a lot, right? When you see a kid that's had a wonderful childhood, its parents are wonderful, no trauma at all, and yet giant insecurities and giant distortions in self-belief could be they're from genetic memories from trauma in prior generations that happen to click into gear with him in a big way. So that makes it more obvious that it isn't always going to be, it's not always going to work to delve into one's past to try and find the source of the defective thought or the undermining thought, the blind side. So again, that places emphasis on what should we do how can we identify them. So one of the best ways is to, and this, one of the things I want to make clear here is that I know I don't know everything. I'm just trying to help. I've learned a lot, and I've got a lot more to learn. But, you know, if you find pieces of this unacceptable, I encourage you to set them aside and say, hey, that's unacceptable to me right now, but I'll pay attention to the rest because there might be some good bits here. Because it's so easy for that's unacceptable thing to blow away the rest of it. And that could be a program inside you saying, I don't deserve to get better. I don't deserve to be better, right? I'd rather stay where I'm at, deep, deep, deep down inside for whatever reason. So I know that I'm imperfect, and I know that what I'm saying, some of these things might be hard to buy into. Certainly with my older son, when I told him this one, what I've noticed, and when you research it, you'll see there's a lot of other people saying the same thing. What we get angry about in others tends to be what we believe about ourselves, but don't want to be true, essentially, right? So, notice the things that anger you about others and consider them to be you projecting your own weaknesses or your own dysfunctional beliefs onto other people, right? So if you think somebody is unwilling to commit emotionally in your marriage, probably you have a deep-seated belief that deep-seated process that is preventing you from actually being emotionally available to fully commit. Use them as a mirror because you are actually projecting your own belief system on the world around you, on the people around you. Yeah, somebody just got off there because it's hard to buy into this. I believe that. My older son, he thinks I'm a complete idiot, and it's extremely radically weird that this could be a useful instrument or that there's any truth in it. So I recognize that this is hard to buy into, but I have loads of experience of it being true. So, if you're willing to open your mind to that, give it a chance. I.e., what makes you angry about others, consider that a reflection of what you believe about you, what you don't want, what is a weakness of yours? Put it that way. What is a weakness of yours that you are not yet addressing, i.e., your blind side? What do your kids do that really winds you up? I mean, there are things your kids do, like run across the road without looking, that winds you up for obvious reasons, because you want them to stay alive. But what behaviors do they exhibit that wind you up in a way that is perhaps a little extreme, a bit over the top? That's probably pointing out something that is a blind side of yours. Yeah? Use those mechanisms as ways to identify. The hidden undermining thoughts are the worst ones because we're not dealing with them. We don't know them. We haven't figured them out. It's taken me ages to figure out some of mine, and I'm relatively self-aware and have been relatively self-aware for a very long time. So I gave you some examples of, do I really believe it that I deserve that thing that I want, but do I actually believe that I deserve it? Because I've got to believe that I deserve it, otherwise it's not going to happen very well, is it? So these are examples. There's, do I feel loved? That's one big one. And then the other one is, the corollary to that is, do I deserve? Do I honestly believe that I deserve to be loved? I went through a process where I thought that it's too complicated. It's about trust. I thought that I wasn't trustworthy enough. I had a deep-seated belief that I wasn't trustworthy. So I worked on that. And then what it really came, the bigger belief, maybe that was exactly right on, but there was another belief which was, for reasons that I can identify in my life, I have difficulty trusting others, right? So changing that has been very good for me, right? Because it was a trauma which meant that I was really remarkably unwilling to trust others. And that's not good in life. It's a bias. It's too extreme, or it was in my case. But it took me ages to figure that out. Okay, going on to where they reside. So this is, I think, is pretty common knowledge, but they're locked into the subconscious mind. So the powerhouse in our brain is the subconscious mind. The conscious mind has a lot less power, has a lot less function. It does a lot less, but it's also the gatekeeper to the subconscious mind. So unfortunately, it's hard to find these deep-seated beliefs that are getting in our way, and it's hard to fix them because they're in the subconscious, and the conscious mind blocks all access, especially when it feels threatened, right? So that's why people go for therapy sessions for 30 years and don't make much progress, is because they're in the conscious mind, they're having regular discussions, and the conscious mind is saying, yeah, no, everything's fine. Yeah, I never heard that, never knew that. No, I don't think that's me. No, no. Hiding from, right? Blocking access to where where the dysfunctional belief resides, so it never gets fixed. So decades of therapy didn't accomplish anything. There is a method, I'll get into it later, there's a relatively new method of therapy which overcomes that problem. Access is blocked. One of the things that I found in the work environment where I've been helping people get overcome their own dysfunctional beliefs has been that they have a whole bunch of support programs for every dysfunctional belief, right? It's astounding. So I'll have an hour meeting with somebody who's really open-minded and really hearing me and really getting it and understands what needs to be done. And they then, I go back and check 3 or 4 days later, check in, have a brief chat. It's astounding. The feedback I gave, which was at a 10 out of 10 on the 1 to 10 scale, they've managed to turn that down to be a 1 on a 1 out of 10 on that scale, right? So they're not really going to pay much attention to it, and they have, oftentimes you can't figure out what the programs are that cause that, but obviously they aren't going to change much, right? If they manage to take that very important feedback and squish it down to a 1 instead of a 10 out of 10. So that is the biggest problem, is that the mind likes the status quo. Maybe it's afraid of change, maybe it thinks it's supposed to be in its current state, but it stays in its current state, and it's rather difficult to move on. And the gatekeeper for all of that is the conscious mind, right? That's where all these programs are resident, the support program. Oh, I'm too busy, I'm overloaded, I don't have time to make that, right? So I have a good friend who is actually my ex-wife. I want her to get in. I want her to exercise, to lengthen the length, to have a longer, healthier life, right? So we have discussions from time to time, and she never can do it. She doesn't have time. She's too busy. So I posed a hypothetical question with her the other day, which managed to break through a lot of the logjam. I said, if you knew for a fact, that you would die in 3 months if you didn't take up a particular type of viable exercise, do you think you would find a way to take it up? Because she had told me in our last discussion it was impossible because of a bunch of reasons, and she said, "Yeah, I'd make it. I could do that." So then I said, "If you could do that, then you can do it. It's not impossible, right?" So that was lucky that I was able to break through. But anyway, moving on. The support programs are astounding. The distortions that we give ourselves. I was in a restaurant recently, 3 weeks ago, and I just happened to meet this young woman who it was really cool that we met, because she's having problems in her life, and she is wanting to change careers because she hates the job she's in, even though she's good at it. And she's got some serious dysfunctions that she knows that they're there, but she can't deal with them, right? And so she was jazzed to meet me, and she wants to heal, and she wants to improve herself. And I do these healing group things, as a lot of you guys know. And she was going to come, and that was that, and she wanted the info. And then guess what? She was too busy to attend, right? Part of her is afraid of fixing herself. So actually showing up is difficult, right? Oh, I'm too busy, I don't have time. I'll make it next week, and then it falls off the table, doesn't it? It's amazing how we block ourselves from fixing these defective thoughts or these undermining thoughts. There's a kind of therapy called EMDR. I won't spell out the wording behind it, but it's all capital letters: E for Edwin, M for Mother, D for David, R for Rapid. And in that method, they put the patient into a meditative state. They have a particular way of doing so, and with a good therapist, they're able to make huge strides because they're in direct touch with the subconscious mind, right? And they have a methodology by which they deal with issues successfully at the subconscious mind level. It's really powerful. I'm not trying to sell you on EMDR or that you need therapy in any way, shape, or form. I'm just telling you that that exists. So I mentioned earlier that DNA memory exists, so we don't have to necessarily, it may even be impossible to identify the trauma that's causing a distorted belief system or distorted thoughts to be in our subconscious. That's a really valuable thing because spending eons of time trying to find out the source and relive it and reprogram it is a tad challenging if you don't actually have the memory in a reachable form. Getting past the conscious mind barriers, I mentioned that. So how do we do that? How do we get past the conscious mind barriers? Meditation is the most obvious instrument. While we're in a meditative state, the conscious mind is on the back burner and the subconscious mind is more available or completely available. So getting oneself into a meditative state is a very effective instrument. And another one is to know that as we transition into sleep and as we transition into wakefulness, during that window, those two windows of time, the subconscious is fully available without being gated by the conscious mind. So one of the methods I use is I have a little recorder here. I'm not recommending this particular recorder. Any little recorder is good. And I record assertions that I might want to believe into this little device and put it on an auto recycle thing. And then I have it play underneath my pillow quietly enough that it's not keeping me awake, loud enough that as I surface and as I fall asleep, I hear these assertions. And some of them put a smile on my face if I'm awake enough because they are what I need to hear. I like hearing them, right? So that's an easy way to go about it. Of course, if you fall asleep instantly and only wake up with the alarm instantly and never wake up in the night, that might not be such a useful instrument for you, yeah? But meditation, while you are meditating, stating your assertions or playing them in an audio form is very valuable, and that's the easiest method that I recommend to you for changing your beliefs. So some really superficial examples of where I've made progress using this exact method. I do it when I meditate, when I'm looking to meditate on my own for my own help, and I do it when I sleep, as I said. So the sorts of things that I've done, I used to have all these violent dreams, where bad people were chasing me. I was trying to stop them. We got in a fight, and the worst thing was I would be doing this and punching and kicking and stuff, which is not good. If you have somebody else in the bed, it's really not very nice. And in any way, it isn't a good thing from a health standpoint to have that happening in your dream state. So I made this type of assertion that all my dreams are lovely experiences. And the people are really friendly to me. And every event I go to, it's like a celebration. It's a wonderful thing. And guess what? I don't have any more of those horrible dreams anymore. They weren't really horrible in the sense that they were nightmares exactly, and I didn't always remember them. But the kicking and moving about in bed thing, I wanted to stop that. To stop myself snoring, there are physical things you can do as well. But I tell myself that when I sleep, my breathing is really easy. I love to breathe really easily at night. And I breathe through my nose and I breathe through my mouth. I keep my mouth open as I sleep. I have those kinds of assertions, not verbatim exactly. And guess what? I don't snore. So, when you break an arm or a leg or an ankle or have a severe injury, how somehow or another during your sleep you manage not to lie on it in a way that gives you excruciating pain or makes the damage to the break worse. We are able to do these things in our sleep. And anyway, so I've done those things and others with the audio system, which are very superficial, but you can tell it's working, right? There are others like that I've done. Of course, the biggest things in life, it's a little more difficult to be able to prove change. I'm not sure between yesterday and today how much it changed. My ability to trust others is, I don't know. Unless some really great experience occurs where you trust somebody and you wouldn't have done it before. But usually, I'm just giving you these examples because they're easy and small and it actually works, right? Okay. Okay. Now, when we are talking, this is really important stuff as to how to change our thought process. And I have to say that there are others who have different beliefs about this, but I've studied this and experienced this, and I believe this approach is the best one. So, given that the subconscious is where all the power is, how do we most effectively communicate with the subconscious when we're making assertions about the beliefs we want it to adopt? Right? You can't. So think of it this way. I've got to stop for a moment and process in the right sequence. So my view of how the subconscious mind, my way of envisioning the subconscious is like a 3-year-old. Very straightforward use of language, right? You can't use negatives and you can't use double negatives. If you say don't think about a pink elephant to a 3-year-old, they're thinking about a pink elephant, right? And if you say I no longer abuse alcohol to a 3-year-old, he says you abuse alcohol, right? And the no longer, you can't get away with that kind of language. So it's not easy to do this. I found this to be extremely difficult, but taking something you want to stop doing and figuring out a way to state an assertion in the positive with straightforward, clear-cut language that overcomes that other practice you want to get rid of can be very, very difficult. But that's what I believe you have to do. You can't say, I no longer eat too much, right? Because what's going to happen in the 3-year-old's mind? I eat too much. Not the no longer. That doesn't work. That language is just complexity that doesn't carry any validity to the subconscious mind. Okay, so envision it as a very, very powerful machine, if you will, in your brain, but that it takes simple input. So where it gets more nuanced is let me think of an example here. If you say, I'm going to be very wealthy, and you make that assertion to your subconscious, in my view, that's saying you're on a journey, but you're never going to get there, right? The subconscious says, I'm going to be very wealthy. It has that belief system. I'm going to be very wealthy. Well, kids, you can imagine the leader delegating out tasks to the various parts of our system, say we're going to be very wealthy. Everyone says, woohoo, cheers, we're going to be very wealthy, but they don't do anything to make it happen because it's a future tense, right? It's a prediction. You have to state it as a now condition. I am wealthy would be a pretty generic way of saying that, but I am wealthy, because then the subconscious is noticing, guys, we're wealthy, but I'm noticing inconsistencies. Look over here, that's not wealthy. Look over here, that isn't wealthy either. Something's wrong. We've got to fix this stuff, guys. Please, come on, get in gear. We're wealthy. I'm seeing inconsistencies. Fix them. Right? If you think about it in that way, it makes it easier to construct assertions that will overcome the negative, right? I always eat too much. Well, okay. I stopped eating too much. That's no good. I always, an assertion, I'm not saying this is the world's best version of it, but you can say, I always eat the right amount of the right food at the right time. Now that's going to overcome the rest, and it's a positive statement. That's a lot easier than some others, right? So I deserve to be wealthy. That's a good one if you don't think you deserve it. Or I deserve to be loved. Those are straightforward ones. But I have found when I'm noticing a negative behavior that I want to overcome, and which has a negative belief causing it, of course, then I want to overcome, I find it extremely difficult sometimes to come up with a positive assertion or two or three that overcomes it. Yeah? So recognize that it can be difficult, but use simplistic language. One of the times I notice a test of it, and I sometimes will change my audio assertions in the recording, is it sounds ambiguous after the fact. Do you know what I mean? It's like that sentence, that word's a little hard to make out. It could be interpreted as a different word that has a different meaning. And I want this to be clear cut. I don't want any ambiguity. I don't want to waste this powerhouse of a subconscious brain and the method by which I'm communicating to it by having ambiguous statements, really, really clear-cut ones. And it's astounding how stupid I feel when I look back. You know, I'm always making them better, and they always look like they could have been better sooner. Okay. Okay. So, I already said avoid the getting better syndrome, right? So, you know, if somebody is drastically overweight, then it's hard to believe that I am now skinny and healthy and in perfect condition, right? It's just a very hard belief and a hard statement to make because we know it isn't true. But the subconscious needs to hear that statement in order to do its part to make it true. Obviously, if many of us would have seen The Secret, read the book or whatever. The Secret is marvelous, except for people who aren't prepared to make an effort to get to a place. So, of course, if we say we are wealthy and the subconscious starts to kick in and do its thing, we still, as in our conscious lives, we have to do things to cause wealthy things to occur, opportunities that come by us. We have to take advantage of them. We have to act. That goes without saying. But let me see, where am I going here? Yeah, stating it in the already done state is a bit unnatural at first, I know. And it took me a lot of effort to be willing to do that. But go back to what I was explaining earlier. The subconscious mind is super, super powerful, and it will take what it now believes and try to make it true. If it notices inconsistencies, it will do its best to fix those inconsistencies, right? I am in great health. There you go. If you want to be more specific, my arteries are all perfectly clear. Blood flows smoothly through them without obstruction. No, that's no good. You can't say without obstruction. You just got to say flows perfectly through them, right? It is a tad challenging, but that kind of assertion is really powerful, and it works. Okay, so then the mechanics of the process I mentioned earlier. Sleep transition is easy. Doing it while meditating is easy. I don't know how many of you already meditate. Please put in the chat box if you don't know how to meditate. Let me know what I'm dealing with here. If you just say can't meditate, or I can't, or no meditation, or some short phrase, or no, I'll know that means you don't meditate. Nobody. Wow. Okay, so I'm not going to teach you how to meditate then. Okay, so another powerful component of this, or component of getting yourself to the desired state, once you've identified what it is. Hello, Jennifer. Were you going to say something? No, okay. I'm muting everybody, but you can unmute yourselves later if you need to. But now, for that matter, if you want to speak. So, a very powerful method of causing us to accomplish our goals in life at the conscious level is to visualize where we want to be, what we want to have happen. And it's also very powerful in a meditative state to envision us at the end point as though it's there, and feel gratitude for it. I'm not saying this is easy, but if you are able in a meditation to envision the reverse of the problem, right? If it's that if your inherent belief is nobody respects you, then imagine a situation where everybody respects you and people are coming along and congratulating you and patting you on the back and saying, hey, it was great, whatever it might be, something of that ilk. Envision that very clearly in your mind and feel grateful. If you can feel grateful for it, that's even better than just visualizing it clearly, obviously. That just empowers the journey further. Okay? Okay, how are we doing on time? We're doing great. What I do, I'm just going to turn off the heater in this room. what I do to validate whether an assertion is now believed by my subconscious mind. I'm not saying that this would work for everybody. I am very self-aware. I wasn't self-aware when I was 21. I was remarkably unself-aware and probably remarkably selfish. I don't know. I wish I could go back and observe, you know. But the point here is that I lost the point. Where was I going, Rod? Visualize. I. I'm so sorry, guys. I lost the plot there for a moment. Where was I going? I was talking about visualizing in the desired state. Oh, feeling gratitude for it. So I was very lucky early in life that I was able to envision desired outcomes. That's something I was very, very fortunate that it was sort of automatic for me. So I've been doing that. But I do find it extremely difficult to live in a state of gratitude. Actually, now it's not true. That's one of the other things I've done in the last couple of years is put a lot of effort into being grateful at all times. Yeah, that's an assertion of mine. I always find ways to see the positive. I always find ways to be grateful for every development in my life, right? That's the sort of thing I need to say to myself in order to overcome the fact that I was always striving to accomplish something, and then when I got there, I'd be striving for the next thing and never celebrating and never feeling gratitude of any significance for any duration of time for having accomplished the thing I accomplished, which is part of my having done a lot, but also part of having made it more difficult to do a lot in life because I haven't been grateful enough along the journey, right? Now I'm a hell of a lot more grateful and I'm getting better at that too. But the point I'm getting at here is that envisioning something in a meditative state, which is the desired outcome, will empower your subconscious to cause it to occur. And if you can feel gratitude for it as well, even better. It's even more powerful. Okay? Okay. Then where I was going when I lost the plot earlier is that I am fortunate to be very self-aware and that self-awareness enables me to test my assertions and see if the subconscious buys in yet, right? So I'll literally, in a meditation, where just focusing on it, I'll make the assertion verbally to myself. It may be silent or verbal. And if I get an emotional response, it means haven't fixed that one yet. You know, so whatever it might be, that's how I test it. I can't do that while I'm just driving along in the car, but I can do that in a meditative state. So I encourage you to do. You might find that another thing I do is if something has if something crops up in a discussion, we're talking about something like my mother's death or something, then if I get emotional when I describe what occurred, beyond, of course, my mother died, and that's a sad thing. But if I still overreact to it the way I used to, because I had some serious trauma about that I've dealt with, that means I haven't actually completely dealt with that trauma. I have to go back and do some more work, right? So pay attention. See, pay attention. If the amount of, in that case, heat or emotional response that I experience when I'm describing something that I thought I'd adjusted myself to and got to a balanced place in my mind on, if you have too much heat about it, that means you still got work to do, yeah? Okay, so now I'd like to take questions if you have any, and you're welcome to put them in chat and or to unmute your microphone. And then I've got a couple other things I'd like to do um, afterwards. I'm going to review. So if you have questions, put them in chat or unmute yourself. So just reviewing what we've covered here. My disclaimer that I'm not a doctor and remotely close. What are thoughts that undermine us? I call them blind sides. How do we identify them? Where do they reside? How do we change them? And that's what we've covered today, right? So, any questions, comments, suggestions? All right. So, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to play a piece of binaural music that I think is very conducive to meditation, and I'm going to encourage all of us to do the following. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is, once you're into a meditative state, I'd like you to envision the opposite of the thing that is dragging you down. Identify the thing that's dragging you down. How do I rid myself of attracting dysfunctional people? Good question. So I would say in that case that you may, how it got there part can be from a multitude of sources, can't it? So let's not focus on that, but let's focus on what probable internal belief is causing those dysfunctional, causing you to attract the wrong people. It could be you don't believe you deserve a harmonious relationship. It could be that your brain has modeled a relationship, maybe your parents, that was dysfunctional, and you're replicating that. It could be that you feel you don't deserve real love or respect, and you deserve to be maltreated, to be mistreated. And so you're finding a way, your subconscious is obediently finding a way to make that happen again and again and again. Yeah. So if that's the solution, so I'll get it's good. Put more questions in. I'll get to them. I look forward to answering them. So those kinds of beliefs, the sort of things you can say to yourself to overcome them are: I am loved, and I deserve to be loved. Yeah. I'm great at finding people, selecting people to be in my life that are balanced, that are wonderful, that are compatible to me, and that I can have a marvelous and that I have a marvelous harmonious relationship with. I am great at identifying the good people that add to my life, that are compatible with me, right? Those kinds of assertions will turn the situation around. Obviously, the specifics in your case, if you think about it, as you do this, you may get greater clarity like I did on the trust thing. But that's what I recommend you do. And you're welcome to ask a follow-up question on that if you like. I'm going to pull up the chat box so I can see. For example, actually going back to the dysfunctional people thing, you know, when I've been single, especially when I'm single now, but when I was young and single, you know, I kept on meeting. I met women who were actually not even. Bottom line is this: that men and women, if they're afraid of a long-term commitment, one of the ways they'll go about solving that is only put themselves in relationships that can never become a long-term relationship, like dating married people, right? Or dating people that are only visiting temporarily and then they're going to leave the country, or you know, things of that ilk, right? Escape mechanisms that sort of guarantee or almost guarantee that there'll never be a long-term thing here with real exposure. Okay, how did you find the courage to apply yourself professionally? I've always been afraid to apply for positions that I know I can do. So what I would suggest that is going on with you is that you may be afraid of failing, and there's risk taking on a position. Maybe these are attractive positions and you could do really well in them. You may be afraid of failing, afraid of true exposure, and that you would fail. So that's one example of a thought that could be undermining you. You may be, I think that's the most likely one, right? You're afraid of failing in something. Probably the stakes are bigger because you're probably doing things that aren't as exciting to you at the moment. And this is exciting, so the stakes are bigger for whatever reason. So I think probably it's a fear of failure thing. And what you can do as an assertion to change that, to turn that around, is construct something like this: that I am remarkably successful. I am remarkably self-confident. Great things are always happening in my life. Amazing opportunities always flow to me. I am astoundingly good at identifying strong opportunities and taking advantage of them with great success. Right? You're stacking the deck. You're making these statements that are very powerful, and they're in the I am, they're in the now. They're not in the future. Yeah. So by asserting them enough in a meditative state or when you're in a sleep transition, you can get to the point that you genuinely believe these things, and then that makes it easier for you to take on a risk where the upside's great, but it's frightening to miss out, right? That's what I would recommend, something of that ilk, yeah? But in my case, I have to admit that in my case, it never took courage to apply myself professionally. I was scared that I was a failure, and I had this deep-seated need to prove myself to be a success. So that's not the right way to be motivated, right? It's better to motivate oneself based upon the desire of success and the rewards that come from it. But I had this deep-seated belief that I was a failure, and so I was knocking down doors and walls and kicking ass and driving to prove that not to be true. Not the best dynamic, but it was successful until it wasn't successful, and then I've had to sort of, flip it, right? But it was never difficult for me to apply myself, because how am I going to get there otherwise, right? Nothing's going to happen if I don't push. And if anything, I push too hard. Nowadays, I'm more able to relax, give a little bit of space, envision what I'm driving towards, and then allow it to occur. Of course, I do all the right things. I facilitate it here and there and put the team together, whatever it might be. You can't just spectate, but I'm not as hard on it, grinding away. I'm allowing it space to happen. There's been a couple of times in my business life where major deals that I've been working on only came to pass when I was on vacation. I wasn't even in touch. So I'd noticed that, and I thought, whoa, what does that mean? And it was sort of random feeling at the time. But nowadays, because I'm more capable of giving distance, then I've noticed that more great things are happening in my life. Yeah, I could be imagining it, but I don't think I am. Any more questions? Any recording will not include these questions and answers, obviously. At least not. If I include them, I'll have to find a way to remove the chat so no one knows who asked the question, right? There's no way I want to publicize anyone else's issues. It's weird enough that I'm describing mine, huh? Okay, any more questions? Nope. All right, so, and you can keep on posting them. We've got a little bit more time left here. So what I propose to do now, unless you guys don't want to do this, and let me know right away if that's the case, is to play a binaural beats recording, and after I'm going to ask you to set up your thoughts. So how to not fall victim of gaslighting narcissists. So I think gaslighting is when they come into your life and then they just disappear, right? And narcissists are essentially very self-centered, manipulative people. So I suppose if it happens regularly, which it must be, otherwise you wouldn't be asking the question. So if I assume your question, how to not fall victim to gaslighting narcissists, if I assume you're asking it because it happens often in your life, then I suggest to you that you have one or other belief that is essentially limiting you on purpose. Its belief is you don't deserve respect, say, or you don't deserve a genuine, loving, balanced relationship, or you deserve to be abused, or you should be abused, or you're patterning after an abusive relationship that you've seen with significant others like your parents, or in a distant memory through DNA, right? In any case, so then the kind of way to not fall victim would be to make this kind of assertion, which is, I am excellent at identifying people to spend time with in relationships or as friends who treat me with respect, who care about me deeply and genuinely, and who are consistently in my life. Right? So I basically fabricated a statement that's as watertight as I could make it quickly to help. And if you if you repeat it often enough in a sleep transition or in a meditative state, you can overpower the current programming, right? That's what I would suggest. Okay, how to feel worthy? It's make the assertion that you are worthy and that you deserve to be worthy. Yeah, so something to be worthwhile. So I'll expand on it a little bit, but something like this, I deserve respect. I deserve to be loved. I'm an important part of the world and of the universe. People around me care about me greatly. I attract people into my life who respect me, who trust me, who find me to be important in their lives. I deserve I deserve the best in life. I deserve all of the best things in life. I deserve them. I am worthy of them. Those kinds of assertions, watertight as you can make them like that, with very clear language, made multiple times in a meditative state or in sleep transition, can turn it around. Not to say that's the only thing you're dealing with, but that's the sort of thing. Oops, excuse me, that is the kind of assertion to make. Yeah. Now, one of the things that's interesting is that when you get into I've lost the word actually. There's a lot of people that talk about these days manifesting. So manifesting isn't that different than dealing with your subconscious. It's a matter of who do you believe has the power. It's more straightforward to place the emphasis on the subconscious, which is the powerhouse in our brain. You can believe that the universe doesn't expect us to fail. The universe isn't trying to send us defective people and make life a living hell, right? It isn't trying to do that. It wants the best for all of us, God, the universe, whatever it is you consider. But in our own heads, for life experience reasons or genetic memory reasons or trauma, or patterning, because we saw people doing stuff in an unsatisfactory way, or a way we don't really, in a way that is dysfunctional to emulate, then this is how we change that stuff. We reprogram our subconscious thoughts and beliefs to the positive. Yeah. Jennifer says yes, thank you, and Lisa says this was an excellent opportunity. And use of time. Thank you for sharing. Great, Lisa. And that was Lisa K. And Lisa B says, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It touches with my beliefs. Cool. And Christina says, yes, please do this more. I'm so grateful I was able to catch this one. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, great. Oh, that's great, guys. Kathy says, go for it. All right. Jennifer says, very grateful. Thank you. You know, it's funny because it's hard. The easy thing is knowing all this stuff and having all these beliefs. But I made a list, of course, and then I organized the list. It was the organizing part was important, because there's so much I want to say. It was essential that I organize it into some logical sequence so I could say it in a way that would be digestible or acceptable, So thanks, guys. Jennifer says, very grateful. Thank you. Oh, that's great. That's really great. If there aren't any more questions, then I'm just going to I'm going to copy the comments really for my own benefit. Carmen says, I found this to be very helpful. We'll love another session. The thing is, for you guys, I don't know what I would say. I guess I don't really know what I would say differently. It would be kind of a repeat broadcast for new people that come in. And if that's beneficial for people who've already been to this session, that's cool. But I think it might be boring. It's the same thing again. Possibly seeing other people ask their questions and having me answer them, that might be helpful. I had a huge breakthrough in 2008. I went on a 3-day intensive self-improvement course, and all of it was nice and fun and stuff, but it was dilute, and I'd done a lot of things like that before, so it really wasn't really moving the needle much with me. But then there was this 3-minute section where a guy was pouring out his heart about how these mistakes he'd made were ruining his life. He couldn't function properly, and the instructor he had a cynical bastard sense of humor, really he did. I didn't appreciate it at all. I thought it was inappropriate. But the way he skewered that guy, the language which he used, pointing out that dwelling on your past mistakes is obviously a very bad idea, which I already knew logically. The way he stated it, he got my subconscious. It went straight through into my subconscious mind, like that. And from 2008 on, I'm able to forgive myself for my past mistakes, which I never did before. Imagine that, carrying around all your mistakes, especially the big ones. I still have them, I can remember them, but I'm able to say, yeah, you know what, I can't fix that. It's in the past, no point dwelling on it. Learn the lesson, move on, right? That is such a huge improvement. So that 3 minutes was worth the 3 days. It was wonderful.